welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. If you're a home buyer in the state of Washington, you're paying reparations. Did you know that? Did you know that? Starting January 1st, if you're trying to buy a home, which is already expensive as it is, you are paying reparations to potential first-time home buyers of color in the state of Washington who meet certain criteria. If that feels like it's blindsiding you, it kind of blindsided me too. So there was a bill passed last session in Olympia, and this is kind of how these things go. And I'll take responsibility for this. I think that we get, there's a few things every session that we're really passionate about. And I think we focus on really important issues, and you can't cover everything. But then sometimes you got bills that really sneak through, and I might have talked about this one a little bit last year, but my recollection of it was maybe I didn't fully understand what it was going to do. Because clearly I'm not in favor of reparations, right? However, I have said that if there are distinct, specific examples of the government having discriminated against a specific person, a specific family, where you can prove it. You can go look back 40 years and say, oh, the government, took our house, or we were told you cannot get this home, this area, or something like that. Then I do think it's okay if the government, on a case-by-case basis, makes a wrong right. But some sort of widespread reparations to say, because of the color of your skin, regardless of whatever your situation is now, white people and the taxpayers are going to give you money, I just think is absurd. I also, in this, I just want to preface my kind of opinions on this. I understand that because of slavery in this country, we have Black Americans who were robbed of an ability to build generational wealth. And I do think that poverty that they were pushed into and kept in does have a ripple effect for future generations. But at some point, you have to be willing to say, okay, we have come a long way as a country, and we think that your skin color is not a barrier for success in this country. And so we're not going to reverse racism it and make white home buyers pay for your house. It's just silly, but that's what's happening right now. So let me break this down, and I'll just tell you how we were clued off to what was going on. Our friend Alicia Perkins down in Olympia, her husband's a real estate agent, and he got this notice from the Washington Realtors talking about House Bill 1474, establishing covenant homeownership programs. And in this flyer they got, it was sort of a heads up, hey, this is going on. It says HB 1474 increases document recording fees by $100 to fund a new state program to provide down payment and closing cost assistance to people or heirs impacted by racially restrictive covenants. The program is estimated to raise $75 million per year for home ownership. Now, when this bill happened, and I went back, right, because I swear I remember kind of talking about this and thinking, well, as long as it's people who were impacted by government racism, essentially, that robbed them of home ownership, I might be okay with that. And I was going back, and actually at the time, Representative Jamila Taylor, a Democrat, this was her bill. She called it reparations. She said it was a first in the nation statewide reparations bill. Governor Inslee signed it in April of last year. Here's that moment.
This implements one of many solutions to right a historic wrong of who can access home ownership in our state. This bill requires county auditors to add a $100 fee into certain documents that get filed with the county. This money will go toward a new program that provides a pathway to home ownership for socially disadvantaged communities that have been excluded from generational wealth building opportunities because of racial housing covenants. Historically, these community members couldn't secure a home because of prejudice and bias against their race, ethnicity, or cultural identity, without any regard to their individual character. Today's bill finally takes steps to make that right. As the first state in the nation to implement this policy, we're going to use the same system that enabled prejudice and bias in home ownership to do some good and help people obtain houses.
Okay, so I agree with some of what the governor said in terms of, like they said, the generational wealth thing and the lasting impacts of that. Like if you had a parent or grandparents with a home, they were able to sell and make money. That's how you build wealth in this country. So I agree with some of that. But his thought that this particular bill takes a wrong and makes it right, I disagree with, having now read into the details of it. And one of the reasons why we're talking about this now is not just like, oh, hey, we didn't cover this well enough last year. It's because a lot of this just started to be implemented. So the bill was passed last year, but now these fees that home buyers are going to pay are starting to be collected, and they can really add up. And for a home buyer already in the state, we know that that's pretty wild. So let me just go through a couple key things in the bill that was passed. Again, House Bill 1474. So beginning January 1st, 2024, except as provided in subsection 2 of this section, the county auditor must collect a covenant home ownership program assessment of $100 for each document recorded, which is in addition to any other charge, surcharge, or assessment allowed by law. And then it says, as part of the Covenant Home Ownership Program, the department shall contract with the commission to design, develop, implement, and evaluate one or more special purpose credit programs to reduce racial disparities in home ownership in the state by providing down payment and closing cost assistance. So $100 for a filing fee. Now, in the law, it explicitly exempts certain things like a marriage filing and a divorce filing, and it basically just has this list of exemptions that narrows it down to these are real estate transactions. So these are filings, and I called a real estate friend and I was like, hey, do you know about this? And they said, well, actually, I checked in on this for you and we didn't know why the fees had gone up. They just went up dramatically, and now we're learning this is why. And I was like, that's crazy, because they've been paying these increased fees since the beginning of the year. Can I say that it's Wes Jones? I didn't want to put Wes Jones out there, but I called Wes Jones and I was like, do you guys know about this? And he had to check around, and it was like, whoa, they were told the fees were going to go way up. But then they hadn't, like, it wasn't explicit about to pay reparations, essentially. And that's not my characterization, again. That's Rep. Jamila Taylor's characterization. It's her bill. She called it a reparations bill. So that's what it is. So $100 for all the filings, which it's not just one, it can be multiple filings, and that typically falls on the home buyer. And it is going to be used to, and I'll get to the qualifications, who qualifies for this. It's going to be used to help reduce racial disparities by providing down payment and closing cost assistance. So not only that, but of course, you can't have a government program without a what? A study. You got to, which I always laugh at with anything, because shouldn't you study it before you make the law? Shouldn't you study it and figure it all out, the best way to do it before you make the law? So it's like studies.
I mean, that makes sense.
And working groups and all of this. It's like, okay, so it says the commission shall complete or cause to be completed an initial covenant home ownership program study. The initial covenant home ownership program study must document past and ongoing discrimination against Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other historically marginalized communities in Washington state, and the impacts of this discrimination on home ownership in the state, including access to credit and other barriers to home ownership in the state. So now it's got to be kind of a history thing. And then this one really caught me. This is wild to me. Analyze whether and to what extent existing programs and race-neutral approaches have been insufficient to remedy this discrimination. So they're basically saying we want to look into whether treating everyone the same on the basis of skin color is insufficient. Again, they're like, we need to study whether reverse racism is the answer. You guys, this is crazy. I am just beating myself up for not having covered this more extensively last session. But again, you have to have a study to do a history lesson. We know what happened. And the fact that you are passing the bill, which the first 2 pages of the bill details, some of the racist housing practices that we had in this state and in this country. So you already detailed it in the bill, and I would imagine that those practices are the reason for the reparations bill. So what, you got to go back and study it again with taxpayer money? And then you're also going to study whether it's not enough just to treat everyone the same on the basis of race? And to what extent existing programs and race-neutral approaches have been insufficient to remedy this discrimination and its impacts? That's crazy to me. So let's get to eligibility, because I think this is an area where reasonable people can disagree about this policy. It says to be eligible to receive down payment and closing cost assistance through a special purpose credit program authorized under this section. A special purpose credit program applicant must have a household income at or below 100% of the area median income. So there has to be some financial need or barrier to home ownership. You must be a first-time home buyer and be a Washington state resident who was a Washington state resident on or before the enactment of the Federal Fair Housing Act on April 11th, 1968, and was or would have been excluded from home ownership in Washington state by a racially restrictive real estate covenant on or before April 11th, 1968. Or you're a descendant of a person who meets the criteria that I just laid out. And then you don't, it's like, well, how do I prove that? Well, seems like just about anything is good enough to prove it. It says records that show a person's address on or about a specific date or include a reference indicating that a person is a resident of a specific city or area on or about a specific date may be used to provide proof that a person satisfies the criteria of this subsection, such as genealogical records, vital records, church records, military records, probate records, public records, census data, newspaper clippings, and other similar documents. So you got a newspaper clipping of Granny living in a certain area. Now, the thing is, I know we're drilling in deep on this, but I failed you so much last session that I'm not going to fail you again. So the thing in that, what we just read is, again, I said, if you can prove direct government discrimination that robbed someone of home ownership in the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s, and you want to make that person or that family and their heir whole again, I kind of feel okay about that. Now, it would depend on funding and all of this, but this just says that it was that they were or would have been excluded from home ownership. So that to me just says you didn't even have to try to buy a home or want to buy a home. Just your existence as maybe a black person in the Seattle area or in Washington state in the 1970s, regardless of whether you lived with someone else or tried to buy a home, would be enough. So that is just cut and dry reparations to me, because that really leaves the door open there. The other thing that leaves the door open and puts all of this into flux for me is this segment of the bill. It says the commission may adopt rules and shall adopt program policies as necessary to implement this section. Program rules or policies must include procedures and standards for extending credit under the Special Purpose Credit Program, include program eligibility requirements, and then it says from time to time, including in response to a Covenant Homeownership Program's study evaluation of program efficacy, the board of the commission may amend the Special Purpose Credit Program's rules and policies. So now it's up to this appointed board, and when they do their study, they can amend the program, they can amend the rules, and they can amend the policies. So remember what the study asked for them, calls on them under this law to do. Look at the history of racism, look at current racist practices, which we have none on the books in Washington state. Come on. We don't have any state law that currently discriminates against people for housing on the basis of race. We don't. But that tells me that they're going to kind of look at it not through the lens of fact, but look at it through ideology and things they believe are racist, which we know in this state is like everything is racist. And then as part of that study, remember at the beginning what it said about that I found so absolutely jarring. To analyze whether and to what extent existing programs and race-neutral approaches have been insufficient to remedy this discrimination and its impacts. So if that's what the study is looking into, and this gives the commission the authority to amend the Special Purpose Credit Program's rules and policies based on the results of the study, that tells me the commission is going to determine, and has full authority under the law to determine, reverse racism is the answer. Treating everyone the same on the basis of race hasn't helped, so reverse racism blatantly is the answer. Which I would say this is already a little bit of reverse racism, because who they're excluding from here in terms of need is white people. It's white people. So basically this is first time, second time, whatever it is, white home buyers who are going to pay reparations to black, indigenous, first-time home buyers, when these white home buyers, they probably didn't do anything wrong. I don't want to trace their genealogy, but it's almost punishing them when you have white people who struggle financially, you have white people who, are struggling to be able to buy a home. And so now you're going to increase the burden for them when they didn't do anything wrong, to decrease the burden for others who might be deserving, who might historically have been discriminated against by the government, but who don't have to necessarily prove that. And that at its core is the issue with reparations. And that at its core is the issue with House Bill 1474, which, as Washington state often is the first state in the union to do something like this. And I didn't know it was happening right now to this extent, adding hundreds of dollars to the cost of buying a home. Even real estate agents were kind of surprised that, oh my gosh, yeah, this kind of happened under the radar. Like maybe you heard some whispers of it in 2023. Well, it's taking effect now as we speak. And we're going to track it. This study, so I've got to dig into the study. Admittedly, this popped up on our radar, and the law says this first study findings were due March 1st of this year. So they've been put out. So I don't know if we have to file a public disclosure request for them, but I plan on doing that to see, okay, what did the study find? Because whatever that study found, that's going to determine how this board that directs how the money is spent in this fund, $75 million a year, that's going to determine how they change the rules and how this reparations bill is reshaped moving forward. And I guarantee you that they will end up reshaping it and making it more of a widespread reparations. So, the more you know. All right, I'm excited. We have a new sponsor on the show starting today. Kind of a short-term sponsor, but we're excited about it because you know what? How many times, Nicole, do I say, I just want to move away to somewhere sane, quiet, where I can just hang out with my husband and our dogs.
Yes.
And just live in the sun.
It comes up.
All the time. As soon
All
as
the
I'm
time.
done with this job, deleting Twitter, deleting Facebook, oh my gosh, day one. And I'm just going to move and I'm just going to build memories and enjoy my life and tune out the crazy. I've just got to do it. And you know where I might do it? Natchez RV Resort. They are now in their phase 2 grand opening. So it's happening May 18th and 19th. The grand opening weekend features 21 extra large RV lots complete with water, power, sewer, and the grand opening pricing starting at only $79,900. Now, before you say, Brandi, I can't picture you out in an RV somewhere in the middle of nowhere. Oh, okay. This is not just some regular RV lot. Natchez RV Resort has 300 days of sunshine, year-round family fun, fishing, hunting, snow skiing, golf, river rafting, outstanding wine tasting, and more. See, now they're speaking my language. They also have a new 4,300 square foot clubhouse, gourmet kitchen, great room, fitness center, showers and laundry, and their pool and hot tub are coming soon. They also have, oh my gosh, I got to take a breath, pickleball courts, playground, dog park, miles of recreational trail. So this is the real deal. It's a luxury experience with something to do for people of all ages. So Natchez RV Resort Phase 1 sold out quickly. Make sure to reserve your showing for the grand opening weekend, May 18th and 19th, with grand opening pricing on Phase 2. Again, 21 extra large lots from just $79,900. When they're gone, they're gone. Reservations fill up fast, so reserve now, 800-422-6009, 800-422-6009, natchezrvresort.com. And Nicole will know that I went through hours of training to be able to say Natchez.
That's true.
You know, when I moved to this state, I said Oregon. Oh my gosh, my first boss was like, it's Oregon, it's Oregon. So, you know, I've worked on a lot of the pronunciations
every once in a
as
while, I
non-native Washingtonians must. So hopefully I nailed that one.
You put a little twang on it from Minnesota twang.
Little O's and the A's, right? All right, I am so excited about our guest on Sundays with Subscribers this week. She was just on the Tucker Carlson podcast. I mean, from Tucker Carlson, between Tucker and I, basically the same thing, right? Same size audience, same stature. I mean, you know, honestly, Tucker's a downgrade for her from the unDivided podcast. Like, why wouldn't you rather be here? But Dr. Naomi Wolf is, first of all, just awesome and intelligent, as you'll find out. She's a best-selling author, columnist, professor. She's a graduate of Yale, received a doctorate from Oxford. But I think most importantly, she is a member of a growing list of people who have been vilified for telling the truth. And specifically, this happened for her in the early months of the pandemic when she spoke out about, I'm just going to say it, women's menstruation and issues women were having, irregularities that she had seen documented on more than one occasion from the vaccine. So she didn't say, don't take the vaccine. She didn't say anything like that. She said, this definitely is worthy of further consideration. And she was excommunicated in the liberal world for doing it.
So this was actually women eyewitness reports of their own bodies. You can't get more granular a primary source than that. This was multiple women independently presenting the same set of facts about their bodies. And also, as a journalist, when you hear multiple independent people confirm a specific thing, that's confirmed in journalism, right? You need 2 or more independent confirmations, and then it's a fact, it's confirmed. But when you're having dozens of independent women from all over the country, different ages, different backgrounds, raising something that's embarrassing and weird to raise, right? That there's an incentive not to talk about, you should take it even more seriously. And I didn't conclude this is caused by the vaccines. I said this is subsequent to the vaccines, which is just literally chronologically correct. And what I said in that tweet is this bears more investigation, which is literally correct. Like every major scandal or damage to women and babies that are famous now, ranging from thalidomide to silicone breast implants, which is a story I helped break, started with a handful of women reporting that something was wrong, that was novel. So unfortunately, what has surfaced is that massive weird reaction, and I totally agree with you that no, it's common sense. You should not deplatform someone for reporting that women are reporting something. That's basic journalism, right? But anyway, you shouldn't platform people for any reason except, in my view, limited carve-outs of already illegal speech like threats of violence.
So again, our interview with Dr. Naomi Wolf is a must-watch this Sunday on Sundays with Subscribers. If you're not a subscriber, you can sign up right now. It's just $5 a month. undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. I have been encouraging you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. You have nothing to lose. In fact, you have a lot to gain, like some money in your pocket in these very difficult times. You all need insurance. We all need insurance. Why not have an experienced insurance broker like First Mark, a local company that's been in this business for a long time, handle your insurance needs for you? Our friend Ben Bailey took the First Mark Challenge and he saved money.
The overall savings, if I look at the 4 different policies that we've initiated here as of last week. So we're saving about $1,500 a year, which is pretty substantial. The bulk of that being in homeowners, but also the auto policy came down a bit.
Yeah, and then you have First Mark Insurance handling your insurance needs moving forward. And I'll tell you, it takes so much stress of that process, wondering, do I have the right insurance? Do I have the best price? So take the First Mark Challenge today. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. All right, the state of Washington is just handout after handout. Oh, you want reparations? Money for you. What won't be? If you're a hardworking Washingtonian, and you happen to be white, you happen to be born in Washington state with the curse of white skin, apparently, then you're screwed. Nothing for you. But, if you want a government handout, you can really look to a lot of places in Washington state. And we already know that EVs, electric vehicles, Americans don't want them. I mean, that's why Biden and the EPA, they were sort of softening some of their regulations because the manufacturers of cars just aren't selling a lot of EVs. I mean, gosh, you saw the rental places who bought these squadrons of EVs because there were going to be government, benefits to it. And then nobody wanted to rent them. Nobody wanted to rent EVs. So they're like, well, what can we do? I guess just bribe people with taxpayer funds to buy the dang EVs anyway. Our friend Todd Myers caught this one too. And one of the big elements here before I get to the story is that, like a lot of other things our government does under the guise of helping the environment, this does almost nothing to help the environment. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Ready, set, drive electric. That's the announcement that Governor Jay Inslee and the Washington State Department of Commerce made on Earth Day. So on Monday, Earth Day. Here is the release from the Department of Commerce. Ready, Set, Drive Electric State Instant Rebate Program to help more consumers choose electric vehicles. So it says combined with federal and dealer incentives, $45 million in state rebates aim to make EVs accessible to lower income drivers. And that has been a barrier for people wanting an EV. I think a big part of it is performance issues and cold weather, but also, like when Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, is like, oh, gas is too expensive, just buy an EV. And we're sort of like, well, that is a really stupid thing to say. EVs are very expensive. So, okay, let's hear what they're going to do here. It says, the choice and benefits of driving electric vehicles is about to become more affordable to many more Washingtonians thanks to a new state program announced today. It's actually thanks to the taxpayers, but they'll never say that. Flanked by a showcase of affordably priced EV models at a Seattle City Light public charging station in Tukwila, Governor Jay Inslee and Washington State Department of Commerce Director Mike Fong previewed the $45 million state program, offering instant rebates to eligible residents purchasing or leasing an RV. I almost said leeching an RV, which actually makes sense too. The program opens in August. Freudian slip. Interested consumers will go to a dealer to learn about low-cost lease offers available under the state instant rebate program. The dealer will get a signed attestation that the buyer meets the income requirements of the program and determine that their credit score qualifies for a lease deal on the offer. With that, the dealer deducts the applicable rebate amount from the cost of the lease and then applies dealer, state, and local fees to arrive at the total lease amount. There is no state sales tax because the vehicles qualify for the state's zero-emission vehicle exemption up to $15,000 in lease payments. So, what's interesting about this? Oh, state giving people money to buy EVs, that doesn't sound too far-fetched. Well, here's the thing. Todd Myers at the Washington Policy Center, you gotta love him. So according to Todd Myers, when you look at how much, pollution this will actually reduce, it is virtually none, and it comes at a much higher cost than the state is currently selling carbon at in its carbon auctions to reduce emissions. Let me explain. So this is from Todd Myers of the Washington Policy Center. On Earth Day, Governor Inslee announced a $45 million program to subsidize the purchase of lease of electric vehicles. The program is targeted at those making 300% of the federal poverty level or less, which amounts to about $93,000 per year for a family of four, which is kind of crazy that that's like 300% of the federal poverty line, almost $100,000 for a family of four. The program pays up to $9,000 for a lease of 3 years or more and $5,000 for a purchase or 2-year lease. The state estimates that the program could reduce, this is where it gets nerdy, but follow along, because we all know Todd's a little environmental nerd, but gosh, he makes sense. It says the state estimates that the program could reduce up to 24,000 metric tons of CO2 over the life of the program. They estimate that about 8,767 people would receive rebates and that each vehicle purchase would reduce 3.65 metric tons of CO2. Using the state's own estimates, the program pays $1,875 to reduce each metric ton of CO2. By way of comparison, the state's CO2 price is only $25.76, or just over 1% of the amount paid by the subsidy. So again, in this subsidy, to reduce a metric ton of CO2 through this program, it's going to cost $1,875. Where to reduce a metric ton of carbon emissions through the state's cap and trade program, right now it's priced at $25.76. So this is a very expensive feel-good program. This is a very expensive program for Governor Inslee to say, look how many more EVs are out on the roadway. And for me to say on my drive home, look how many more EVs are stalled on the side of the road because they ran out of power. It's just really funny. Todd had sent his first line in his article. It says, Governor Inslee wants to buy 8,767 people a $1,125 latte. He says, that's metaphorical, but Governor Inslee's new program is so wasteful, it's the equivalent of paying that absurd amount for a 16-ounce latte. But we know that the government doesn't care about cost versus outcome. Cost versus outcome is irrelevant. Is the cost worthy of the outcome? Ask yourself that question when you work in government for anything you do. Is the cost worthy of the outcome? I point to the governor's right-of-way initiative with homeless encampments, where they're like, oh, we're clearing these encampments off the side of highways Let's not tell people it's costing us $1 million per person to get them out of one of those camps and out of homelessness. I'm not putting a price on a human life, but if you weren't paying $1 million per person and you were actually good stewards of taxpayer funds, I promise you that you could help a lot more people. They don't care about helping the environment. They care about more money coming in, more money going out to their political allies and cronies, and then they can retire from the legislature or from the governor's office and go work in the climate sector where Governor Inslee, I guarantee you, his first job out of the governor's office will be in the climate sector making 7 figures. Bank on it. Bank on it. And benefiting from some of the things that he's done. They don't care about helping the climate.
Well, it's funny
they care about money.
Well, the average EV car costs in the like 50s, $50,000 to $60,000. So you're taking $9,000 off of that. That's not a lot. That's still a very expensive car.
Taxpayer money, but yes.
Especially, oh no, it's a lot of taxpayer money. I'm saying though, if they're bringing down the cost of an EV for a family that's making under $100,000 a year for 4 people.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're including the tiny little EV cars, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably the tiny little, what
We're
are
not
they?
talking Teslas.
Leafs or whatever.
Right.
That's probably one of those. And
Can you even fit a family of 4 in there?
no, I don't. I mean, tight. It'd be tight, I think. But I think that that's still probably $600 payment, $700 payment a month.
Oh, yeah.
And they're saying that that's going to be doable for a family that makes under $100,000 a year.
Especially if it
for
has to
4
be
people.
a new car, right? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people will go buy used cars because cars are depreciating
You can't
assets,
lease
and most
a
people don't go buy a new
used
car.
car.
And Zach Abraham would be very disappointed with this program. I have a feeling because he'd be like, "That's a depreciating asset. Now
Yeah.
you're just putting it on a family that's 300% below the federal poverty line because you convinced them that these rebates are like like manna from the sky." Just
Silliness.
crazy.
It's all for show.
Please. I care about the environment. If you care about the environment, you should be disgusted by the waste of money that is supposed to go help the environment and doesn't. And maybe you'll wake up when Governor Inslee leaves office after pushing this down our throats for 12 years and is making 7 figures in the climate sector. This is a guy who couldn't even tell the truth about what his policies would do to gas prices, who said, oh, it's just pennies, can't be bothered to care about the cost that his people he's supposed to serve are paying at the gas pump. They can't even freaking afford groceries. And now he's out there bragging about, but we're going to give you money to pay for an electric vehicle because we made owning a regular vehicle so damn expensive. And then we lied about it. Get bent. Get bent. Is that what Bart would say? Get bent? Is that Bart Simpson? Get bent. Yeah.
I don't know.
What do you say, Daryl? Eat my shorts. Oh, is it? Daryl's in the wings. Eat my shorts.
That's even,
okay.
Yeah, that's Bart.
I don't know what Get Bent is from. Anyway, okay, let's continue on. I have encouraged you guys, if you're going to sell your home this year, if you're going to sell your home, whoever buys it better prepare to pay reparations. This state drives me nuts. If you're going to sell your home this year, get a head start before the Fed drops interest rates. Chances are you probably need to make some cosmetic upgrades to your home. Wes Jones with sellwithwes.com. This is what they specialize in. They can come in. He's going to assess your house, what he thinks needs to be done, make recommendations. They can manage those projects. They can even help you pay for it up front. And then once the Fed comes in and drops interest rates, you're ready to hit the market day one. If they drop interest rates, that's going to be a nice little rush, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. I mean, we're having a rush right now, and when rates drop, assuming that they do, it's going to pick up, even more. And if you want to take advantage of that, it's probably a great time to start that conversation right now. Whether you want to sell later in the spring, sometime in the summer, or even the fall. If you want to sell in 2024, we're here to start a conversation with you.
Yeah. So a few things will happen when you visit sellwithwes.com. You can use their free home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. And when you contact Wes, he will give you a market analysis so you can set your expectations for how your home might perform on the market. And then he can talk to you about some of their innovative marketing strategies and that listing boost concierge service I mentioned earlier. So sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, you may have figured it out by now. We told you yesterday, this show is not live. I'm not here. I'm not really here. I'm in Florida. I'm in Florida. I deserve it. Nicole, damn it, I deserve this vacation. So do you. Nicole's in the Bahamas starting Saturday for her birthday.
Correct.
She's turning 35. And
That's right.
we are very happy for her. But anyway, so it's kind of like a weird thing, but it is Thursday. So let's get to our edition of Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, you know what's weird about this?
What?
Well, we already told people today's show is taped, so technically I'm with you right now. I'm with you.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's exciting. Wow. Weird meta. Okay, I thought that since, I'm going to be down there dodging alligators, we'd do a trio of alligator stories out of Florida today. But first, another interesting Florida law that I just can't decide. I have some pros and cons about it. So under a new Florida law, if you get arrested, you're booked into a county jail, or you're in a Florida prison, you have to submit your DNA.
Yeah, exactly. Before this, it was anybody with that was convicted of a violent crime would have to submit. Now it's anybody.
Yeah.
So it could be anything. And like you said, I'm mixed about it. I'm kind of a crime junkie, so I listen to a lot of podcasts about unsolved murders, missing persons. So I can't help but to feel like a lot of those cases that go unsolved could get solved by doing this, but also not everybody deserves to have their DNA taken from them, even if you wind up in county jail for a weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, like a drunken weekend, they throw you in the tank, then you wake up and they've got a little swab in your mouth, and now they got the DNA, and then they're going to clone you, and then they're going to give your DNA to space aliens, and no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I mean, look, bottom line, don't commit crimes, right? If you're worried about the government having your DNA for that reason because you've committed a crime and now they have all these ways to track it, just don't commit crimes. So that's a good start. I think the thing I have an issue with is upon arrest, because arrest isn't conviction and it's innocent until proven guilty. So I have an issue with the, arrest in a county jail sort of thing. If you're in a prison, you gotta try real hard to get into a prison these days, like a full-blown prison. Maybe not as hard in Florida as in Washington, but then it's you're going to prison, you need to give them your DNA. So not just a violent crime.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's just another one of those kind of laws we have down here that are slightly infringing in a way.
Not so free. Not so free. I mean, you're not free to violate the law, but you do have constitutional rights. And I'm not a fan of this. I just don't trust the government. And if I wouldn't want a government that I don't agree with politically to do something, I wouldn't want a government I do agree with politically to do something. That's how we ended up in the pandemic mess. People are like, oh, they can have a 975-day state of emergency because I like Governor Inslee. It's like, wow, you give away your freedoms real quick. That's a terrible idea. Wow, we sound more like our dad every day.
I know. I think about that a lot.
Real trouble. Not troubling. It's fine. Dad was woke. Apparently, he was awake. I mean, not
he was
now.
awake. He was awake before people woke up, for sure.
For sure. Okay, how about just for fun? Because I saw one of these and I was thinking, wow, when I fly in, I hope there's not an alligator waiting for me on the tarmac. So let's hit a trio of alligator-related stories so I can really gear up for what I'm in for. Because we are going to the Keys. I imagine we'll see some on the drive. Alligator on runway at MacDill Air Force Base.
Yeah, so this alligator was just chilling under the landing gear of a refueling aircraft up in Tampa at the Air Force Base. He was pretty good size, like 10 feet, and just happened to walk across a whole landing field and just come to rest underneath the landing gear of an airplane. Yeah. But they had to call the Fish and Wildlife to come get him and relocate him safely back to a river where he could possibly find a mate. Because a lot of these stories that we're going to talk about are misplaced alligators because April is mating season. So they'll travel a little ways to find a girlfriend.
Yeah, well, maybe that's what he was trying to do. He was trying to hitch a ride to Boca Raton. He's like, I'm going to go find a chick there. I'm going to Vegas for the weekend. All right, barefoot Florida MMA fighter wrangles 8-foot alligator with bare hands. Why?
Yeah, this is a good one. This is a very Florida. Every word of that headline is Florida, I swear. And this actually isn't this guy's first time wrangling an alligator. Last June, he wrangled up an alligator in an elementary school parking lot. But this one's pretty funny because he did it, in the middle of the street without shoes on, no hesitation, just kind of hopped on the back of this 8-foot gator and, shut his mouth, taped him up, and then carried him off.
Yeah, I am. And that's because, why do they always do that? Because it's harder for them to open, right, than it is for them to chomp down.
Yeah, so when they chomp, it's like they lock their jaws shut. So once their mouth is closed, you can tape it up and they can't break through the electrical tape, I think is what they usually use.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting in looking at the photos, he's legit doing like MMA moves.
Yeah, he is. He's literally down there doing like mixed martial arts on this alligator.
100%.
So apparently this is like a life skill in Florida to take a mixed martial arts class of some sort.
He's like,
just
come
in
on.
case.
The alligator's like, what's going on, man? I was just moving. I was trying to find a mate. All right, last one. This one makes me sad, but look, if the guy's life was in danger, Florida man saves neighbor from jaws of 11-foot gator by hitting it with his car.
Yeah, this one bums me out, but let me tell you, if you see me flailing around getting eaten by a gator, please run your car over the gator. Like, do me a favor. I'll pour one out for the gator later. But this was a big gator, and this guy was walking his dogs by a pond, which if you have spent any amount of time in Florida, you're supposed to know that this is just something you don't do because people's dogs get eaten by gators all the time down here. So he's walking his 2 Labradors when an 11-foot gator, think about 11 feet, that's a huge animal, comes out of the water and chomps him and grabs him by his legs. And he tries poking it in the eyes and up its nostrils, all the tricks they tell you to hopefully make it let it go. He wasn't letting go. So his neighbor happened to be driving by, seen this happening. He said he got out of the car and realized there's nothing I can do with my hands. So he got back in the car and ran the gator over, and the gator instantly let go of this guy and saved his life. So it is sad. And I think that if people use a little more caution when walking their dogs or just themselves, like stay away from all water is danger here. If it's not gators in fresh water, it's crocodiles and sharks and jellyfish in salt water. So just be cautious so we don't have to run over animals.
Gators are gonna gator. Now, I missed the part of the story where the guy was walking with his dogs. If that's the case, I already said I'll commit homicide for my dog. So I would have chopped that gator up in little pieces and I would have had gator stew.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't help but to think if it was a smaller gator, you would have went for the dogs, but this was a massive gator. So he probably just was like, I'll take the bigger of the 3 animals.
He wanted human. Well, my plan is to have no alligator encounters while we're down there because the last time I had an alligator encounter was in Key West with you. We were kayaking through these kind of like, I don't even know. Mangroves where it sort of like creates this tunnel. So there's no way out. You go in, you can't turn around. So Miranda's all like posing, take pictures of me for selfies. And I'm like, there's an alligator. And it's like, got his little eyes on there. And I'm like, we gotta go. And I was panicking. I had a full blown meltdown. And you were just like, it's fine. You know, he's not going to fly out of the water and eat you. None of that. Okay. Love you so much. We'll see you not this next week, the week after.
Yes, and I will see you right now because technically you're here and we're time traveling.
Strange stuff. All right, Miranda, thanks so much.
Bye.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
I will not be wrestling any alligators in Florida. I mean, if it comes down to it, I will. I will choke out an alligator if it comes down to it.
I'd like to wrestle with that guy wrestling the alligator. You're welcome.
Nicole, wow.
That's why I didn't put myself on camera for that.
Usually it's me saying sexually inappropriate things. I will find him.
She's over there cracking herself up.
Wow. Nicole
You're welcome.
Wants to wrestle with the guy wrestling the alligator. Noted, Nicole. She's over there crying. All right. On yesterday's show, I'll look while I'm down there for alligator wrestlers. I know you like a guy who can work with his hands and stuff, and great. On yesterday's show, we talked about these just embarrassing protests across the country, anti-Semitics, kind of horrifying, but also these students out there just admittedly, like this NYU student, or I think they were at Columbia and they came to an NYU protest. No idea why she's there. Here's the clip.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stops. I honestly don't know all of what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine!
I wish I was more educated. I'm not either.
Oh.
I came from Columbia. I was there up at Columbia, and we came down. They said NYU students needed our support. So I came down. I heard there's lots of cops. Some people were saying it was getting dangerous.
Next generation. So I saw that clip. I'm like, man, I worry about them in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I mean, do they have jobs? Are they saving money? This is like the parent inside of me. So I thought we talked to Zach Abraham about financial stuff every week on the show with Bulwark Capital, and I wanted him to weigh in on the financial future of our youth. Zach, aren't you glad you're a money manager now? Because that generation is going to have no money to invest with future money managers.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, there's certain days where where I don't want to be a money manager in this environment, but yeah, sweet mercy. When you take the guardrail of shame off society, meaning at some point this whole speak your truth and everybody's opinion is important. No, it's not. That's why certain people get paid to tell you their opinion, because their opinion's worth more, right? And so you've got all of these people that, for lack of a better term, are idiots, right? That know nothing. And they think they've got something valuable to say. I pinned something on my Twitter the other day that was, far too many people want an audience and far too few want a teacher. You know what I mean? And I can be guilty of that at times, but I don't think there's a statement that better describes this generation than that.
Oh my gosh, 100%. Well, and so, from a financial perspective, here's what's interesting to me. So we've done all these stories about how this generation believes they need far more to retire comfortably. Like, I think there was some study we did, it was like a couple months ago, where it's like, what is your annual income to be comfortable? And like the generation below me was like 400 grand or something crazy.
Right.
But it's like, so they are the most materialistic. They value obviously money the most in terms of the lifestyle they want. But I feel like compared to other generations, they're doing the least to get there.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, so there was another study done where they did a survey of kids of a certain age in China and asked them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the answers were, astronaut, doctor, surgeon, all the stuff that you'd expect. And then in America, they ran the exact same poll. And the number one answer, and it was not even close.
Can I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. Give me 3 guesses. I'm going to say like basketball star.
No. It's more simple than that.
Oh, more simple.
Like for instance, and I'm only going to give you one because it's right there in front of you. Think of the most vapid, worthless, but celebrated type profession in the world. Like in modern day, and think of what these kids are doing with the majority of their time.
They want to be
an influencers.
Bingo.
Oh, Nicole's looking at me like, Brandi, influencer. They want to be influencers.
So the most aspirational job that they see is effectively somebody that does nothing and gets paid too much for it.
Yeah.
Right. So that's what they all want to be. And the sad part about it, my wife and I talk about this all the time, but one of the things that we talk about on a daily basis is teaching our children to be critical thinkers, teaching them to be independent thinkers, and teaching them to hustle, right? Teaching them to work. And that we really believe that just those couple things, along with, the faith that guides our life and as well as the ethics and things like that. But just in terms of competition, if you're a kid that knows how to work and you got a work ethic, you're guaranteed to win. I mean, you are guaranteed to win. So people like the American dream is dead. And I'm like, I understand why people say that. But I think because of what is going on in society, it's more alive than it's ever been, because being able to, like, if you think about like what our dads and what our grandfathers dealt with, it like 60 hours a week working your hands to the bone,
yep.
That got you out. Like that just puts you in the realm of everybody else, right? That was the bare necessity. I didn't guarantee anything. If you can do that with a smile on your face in this generation, you'll rule the world.
100%. Man, I need to bottle up that and pipe it out over the loudspeakers in Seattle. Because I'm not saying that they need to go over there and like work the fields or whatever it is and have a job where you come home and you're blistered every day. But there is something about not only work ethic, but the characteristics that those things can instill in you as young adults about how important that work ethic is and commitment to something. And we just don't see that.
No, and the security and sense of self-worth, right? Like the thing that I think is so traumatic about this, and I don't really think people think about it enough in this light. Okay, the suicide rate amongst young people is at an all-time high, right? Off the charts, right? Well, if you fed a kid a line of complete garbage, nonsense BS their entire life, and they get out in the real world and life starts kicking them on the backside and they take a couple shots right to the jaw, it crumbles their whole identity.
Yep.
It's cruel. Putting people out in this world with that nonsense in their head, it is cruel. It really is. It's a form of abuse. And you're just throwing them to the wolves with no ability to defend themselves. And I think it's tragic. And that's why this whole be not, like, what are you teaching? It's freaking war out there, right? You need to be prepared for that. Not all butterflies and sunshine and all that garbage, right? It's just, I think it's tragic and it's sad. And, you know, I think there's a fine line when you're leading people, especially children. That's why the most effective coaches and the most effective teachers are the ones that are tough. Why? Because you look back on it and you go, there was real value there. You toughened me up. You got me prepared to deal with the onslaughts that were in front of me. And right now they're just throwing them like cannon fodder against this. It's heartbreaking.
Always appreciate Zach's killer insight. So with everything going on, hey, maybe you have a kid who's out at one of these protests. I would highly suggest that they're the ones who have a Know Your Risk portfolio review with Zach Abraham and his team at Bulwark Capital. I mean, you could do it too, but I would love to see the look on one of these kids' faces when they realize that if they don't get their act together, they're doomed in retirement. But in all seriousness, you only get one retirement. Don't risk it. This is what Zach and his team specialize in, is managing your risk. So schedule your free, no obligation risk review now at knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance is no guarantee of future results. All right, since the show's not live, no comments, no poll. I'm sure you have a lot to say. I'll go back and peruse through, see what you guys had to say. We do, however, have a closing sanity check. CNBC article, women don't want to reproduce with today's young men, which I have a good example of coming up in a moment, but this is from CNBC. Too few college-educated men. Now look at why many women undergo egg freezing and the cost associated with it. They call it a mating gap. What's driving the egg freezing frenzy? There's a notion that most women delaying motherhood are doing so to focus on other aspects of their life, such as their careers. That's not so much the case anymore, according to Marcia Inhorn, a professor specializing in medical anthropology at Yale University. Oh, it is Yale, so take this with a grain of salt, but I can see what she's talking about here. The majority of women who freeze their eggs are doing it because they have not found a partner. I call that the mating gap, the lack of eligible, educated, equal partners. Oh, I like that. A little sexism with your female empowerment. Inhorn, who last year authored the book Motherhood on Ice, The Mating Gap and Why Women Freeze Their Eggs. This problem stems from the fact that today women are receiving higher education at greater rates than men. Inhorn noted that women are outperforming men in higher education in 60% of countries, and that the United States alone has 27% more women than men in higher education. Look, one thing I will say is women are more mature than men. I'm sorry, it is just true. And so that's why I married a man who's a little older than me. Because, you know, it's like, we get a little older and now we're kind of cut up. Now, that's not always the case. That does sound a little bit of sexism. But man, after watching the protest across the country this week and some of the young men on our college campuses and in our major cities, this article makes a lot of sense.
Sir, I do not authorize you the right to record me because I'm the only person in this video. You do not have permission.
It's a public place, bro. Know the law.
I do know the law.
It's a public park.
It's a single party state as long as one person. You have to have
nope,
me in that.
Not in public. You want to look it up?
I know the law.
That was my only option. I'd freeze my eggs too. That has been our sanity check, and that has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. Again, a wonderful guest on Sundays with Subscribers, fresh off the Tucker Carlson podcast, Dr. Naomi Wolf. I'll have to ask her, who's a better interview, me or Tucker? I mean, me, obviously. I'm humble. I'm all these things, you know, that Tucker's not. Anyway, we'll see Subscribers on Sundays with Subscribers, and then we'll be back all next week with a special series of episodes. Daryl, you want to make a cameo quick? Come on. Nope. Boop. Boop. Okay. All right. Bye, guys.